Okay, we are back. I have reduced the length of the stem by the right amount for this point in time. Turned out the funnel didn't need any broadening at this point, so I just left that. The junction between the back of the button and the body of the stem, I sharpened that up and made sure that the button stand-ins were of equal length, so to speak, the surfaces on the bottom below. Okay, so the fun is about to begin. And before diving into that, I wanted to cover a concept, because you're going to hear me use a phrase from time to time called dwell factor. And it's something that if you don't understand it, it will hound you. It'll make you slightly crazy because it won't seem to make sense. And then when somebody points it out, you go, aha, of course, how could I have missed it? Believe me, I was there years and years ago. All righty, the type of job that we have planned here is to take these flat areas and make them as flat as possible. And they're about, whatever it is, 4 inches long or something. So that's a bit of difficulty to use a narrow tool, right? So you would expect to take something. Now this is a modified putty, I think they call them putty knives in the like drywall knife, and I ground it down to a certain shape, put a piece of mouse pad on it, and use it for sanding. Now there are occasions when this is the right tool. Wrap a piece of sandpaper around it and go to town. However, it is not the right thing to use for this kind of application, which is counterintuitive. And here we go. Okay, keep your eye on this white marker here. I'm going to put the stem, the center, meaning the middle from measuring from end to end, the middle point, the midpoint of the stem is now in line with that white mark. Pretend that this has sandpaper on it, the way I just wrapped it around there. And I'm going to start sanding. And you notice that the area adjacent to this white mark, the width of the blade never leaves that middle part. In order to go from end to end, I just go from here to here, and whereas the material at each end is only being covered for a small amount of time, as you approach the middle of the stem, it's 100%. So from like 1%, when you're doing this, that very end of it might get 1% of the dwell time of the paper, where the rubber, the vulcanite here in the middle, is subjected to abrasion the entire time you're moving this back and forth. So the net result is, after you make these tools, you put them all together, you get to sanding, and you think, boy howdy, this is as flat as, this is microscopically flat, I'm good to go. And you'll look at what you sanded, and it'll sag in the middle, just like a hammock. And you'll say, wait a minute, I wasn't pushing so hard as to flex this blade. It can't be. What in the world is going on? Well, it's dwell time. You have to equalize the time or compensate for it, but it's far easier to not let it happen in the beginning, is to select a tool that has minimal dwell time whenever you're doing large shaping exercises, if it's a sanding or filing type of situation from end to end. So the method I'm about to show you using a file is the perfect answer to that. Now normally at this point, if I were doing this not for a video demo, I would take this stem farther down. I would change to a lighter or a finer grit paper on the Burr King grinder and slow it down and just get to within very close to a finished stem with machinery. But most of you guys don't have access to anything like that. You do it with hand tools. So I've left this short of completion, or short of the point I would normally stop using automated tools, to show you the hand technique that I used for years before I got that knife grinder. So there we go. I'm going to shut off the camera and move it so you can observe the filing station that I've set up, and we'll take it from there. Okay, move the camera and you can watch me work here. Now, when I said that a narrower tool than this is what you need, and you might have been imagining that I was talking about something like this, which is whatever that is, 3/4 of an inch maybe. No, actually you could, but you're still going to have a dwell time problem, and the amount of surface area that's in contact with that is so high that it's just going to slide on there a whole lot more than you think it's going to. It's like, holy crap, this would be a 100-year project with one of these. So that's not it. So you go down in size again and you think, well, that's better. It's got a higher pressure per square inch, pressure per unit of surface area, so it's got to cut faster. And it will, but still that's a ridiculously difficult task. And we keep on going until we get to these little narrow ones. Now this we'll probably end up using before it's over because it does cut fairly well. But the magic happens with this kind of a guy. Now in cross section, this is like a gentle curve on one side and a slightly more rounded curve on the other, which is hard to see unless you are here in person. But think of a spear point that's slightly asymmetrical. Now this is quite expensive as files go. I don't remember how much, but it's Swiss made and they're pretty spendy. And you can get something that's an approximation of this, although it won't do as good of a job at your hardware store. Usually you can. They're a type of rasp, typically known as a wax file. And they're flat on one side and rounded on the other, coarse and less coarse. The catch with these is you don't have, well, you can watch me use the other one and it'll make sense to you why this is the ultimate tool for hand shaping stems. And rather than keep on talking, I'll just jump in. I'm using the more rounded of the two sides. Now, a file purist will say it's strictly a push one way, lift and pull it back. I get it, and I try to use them that way as much as I can. But in this situation, it doesn't seem to work that way, and at least if you want to get any reasonable amount of efficiency or speed, because I'm actually lifting the pressure slightly on the backstroke, so that wouldn't be apparent to you. But just you push in one direction and kind of pull it back with its own weight rather than this. And as you can see, it doesn't take long to cut through material. And because the contact area is very small, probably 1/8 of an inch, maybe less. If it's a curve, theoretically, it's microscopic. It's infinitely small, but that's not the case. It's about 1/8 of an inch wide. Then you are in charge of the dwell time by how long you spend in a certain area. But up here in the skinny spot, you just take a few, and down here you work for a while. And then you are in charge of the dwell time, or meaning the amount of material removed is totally in your control. And that's pretty much it. With these tools right here, you should be able to get shockingly close to a finished dimension. Now there are tricks to getting it perfectly squared away the way we want it to be, and I'll cover those when we get to them. But for the present time here, the next bit of work is just what you see me doing right here. And the tape lines have been left in place, and you'll grind away on the edge of that, and eventually it'll come loose, and then you'll see the rubber underneath is going to hold a vague line. It'll be a self-marking material. It's really slick. And you can't go wrong as long as you don't allow yourself to get waviness going this way, and that can only be learned from experience. And if you don't cross these lines, the lines that we put on the end of on the face of the stem with the scratch and the white fill-in, remember? And the tape line down at the end here, that mark here halfway, as long as you don't go past that, you're free to do whatever you like. Just be careful, check frequently, use something like this to keep track of how flat you're getting. If you don't have one of these machine blocks, use a small file, anything at all that's straight, an index card, that'd be good, or something like this. Now, it's not as accurate for obvious reasons, but that'll let you know what you're doing wrong and doing right. So, that is it. The technique that you see me doing here is exactly what you would witness were I to leave the camera on for the next half hour. So, there's no point to this, or no point in leaving it on and just having you watch grass grow. So, at this point, I'm going to shut off the camera and get back to you when I'm a lot closer to the finished shape.